We usually think of sleep as, well, downtime, right? It's the time when our brain finally gets to shut off and take a break. But what if that's totally backward? What if, when we're unconscious, our brain is actually doing some of its most important, most active work of the entire day?
I mean, we've all had that feeling after a terrible night's sleep, haven't we? That mental fog where everything just feels a little bit fuzzy, a little out of reach.
It honestly feels like your own mind has put up one of these frustrating block pages. You know the ideas are in there somewhere, but you were just completely cut off.
And all of a sudden, the simplest tasks start to feel like one of these impossible CAPTCHA tests. Is that a crosswalk or just some white paint? Wait, does that tiny corner count?
It's so frustrating. It's exhausting. And you just keep failing at things that you know should be second nature.
Well, that feeling, that mental sludge, that's your brain on sleep deprivation. It's not just tired, it's being functionally locked out of its own operating system.
So what is actually going on inside our heads? Why does missing a few hours of sleep put our entire brain on block?
Seriously, what is happening in there that makes it so absolutely essential for us to function? All right, let's peel back the layers and see what science has to say.
Okay, so the very first major job your brain tackles when you fall asleep is acting like a super efficient overnight cleaning crew.
And the team doing all this work is called the glymphatic system. Now, think of your brain like a bustling city. All day long, its cells are working hard, thinking, feeling, and that produces a ton of metabolic waste. The glymphatic system's job is to come in and take out the trash.
And how it works is just amazing. Get this, while you're in deep sleep, your brain cells actually shrink a little, which opens up more space between them. And this allows a special fluid, the cerebrospinal fluid, to pump through and literally flush out all the toxic gunk that built up during the day. We're talking about clearing out proteins like beta-amyloid, which has been directly linked to Alzheimer's disease.
One of the system's discoverers, Dr. Mike Niedergard, puts it perfectly. Your brain basically turns into a purification organ while you sleep. And without this nightly deep clean, those toxins would just pile up, day after day.
But just cleaning up is only part of the job. It turns out sleep also acts like a master film editor, actively going through the footage of your day and deciding what makes the final cut.
Yeah, it doesn't just passively file away everything that happened. It meticulously sorts through it all, figuring out what's important enough to keep and what can be let go. So how on earth does it make that choice?
Well, researchers designed a really clever experiment to figure this out. They showed people a bunch of complex scenes, like these here. Some were pretty neutral, just a yellow car on a street, but others were emotionally charged, like a crashed car on that exact same background.
And what they found after people got a full night's sleep was just incredible. People's memory for the emotional thing, the crashed car, was super high. But their memory for the boring, neutral background it was sitting on, it completely tanked. It's like sleep makes a trade-off.
Look, here's the actual data. For pretty much every other part of the scene, memory fades after 12 hours. But see that circled bar? For the emotional objects, memory wasn't just saved, it was actually preserved, maybe even boosted a little by sleep. So your sleeping brain isn't just recording what happened, it's actively editing your past, strengthening the emotional core of your experiences, and letting the unimportant details just fade away.
So we can see sleep is doing all this amazing essential work. Which, of course, brings us to the big scary question. What happens when we don't let our brains do their job?
Well, the difference is it's night and day. A well-rested brain is focused and emotionally regulated. But in a sleep-deprived brain, the amygdala, that's kind of our emotional gas pedal, it goes into overdrive. It becomes hyperreactive. We lose our focus, we can't handle stress, and we become way more vulnerable to anxiety. That blocked feeling we talked about, it's not just a feeling, it's a real neurological state.
And this is not some small, niche problem. During the pandemic, all the stress led to this huge surge in sleep issues, a thing people started calling coronasomnia. More than half of all Americans reported dealing with it. This is a massive public health issue.
And the long-term price is steep. Chronic poor sleep doesn't just make you feel groggy, it's a huge risk factor for some of our most serious health problems. I mean, it can literally double your risk of developing depression, and it's tied to heart disease, obesity, and yes, even Alzheimer's. But here's the good news. We are not powerless here. Realizing just how important sleep is, that's step one. The next step is actually doing something about it.
And the best tools for better sleep are surprisingly straightforward, even if they aren't always easy.
consistency is king. Going to bed and waking up around the same time really helps your body's internal clock. Getting some sunlight first thing in the morning is like hitting the master reset switch for that clock. And it goes without saying, but avoiding things like caffeine in the afternoon and that blue light from our phones before bed, that gives your brain the quiet runway it needs to get ready for its big night of work.
As Dr. Mariska Brown from the National Institutes of Health puts it, sleep isn't a luxury. It's not some throwaway thing we can just cheat our way out of. It is a fundamental biological necessity, just like breathing or eating.
We schedule time for our jobs, for the gym, for our families. But sleep is so often the very first thing that gets pushed aside. So the final question is this. Now that you know sleep is when your brain does its most vital work, from cleaning out toxins to literally shaping who you are you giving it the time it needs to do its job?